Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. We're so close to 30,000 subs, and you can make that possible. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories.
I never thought I'd get played on Facebook. Like, of all places, Facebook felt too old school for catfishing. I mean, it's mostly people posting baby pics, food, and random memes about getting old. But that's where I met Jessica, or, well, the version of Jessica I thought was real. She commented under a Marvel meme I'd shared, saying something about how Iron Man was overrated. Normally I'd argue, but I clicked on her profile instead because her profile pic caught my eye. Blonde streaks in her dark hair, pouty lips, gym mirror, selfie type vibes, all that. Her page had maybe 10 pictures in total, and they all looked like she just walked out of a music video. Not gonna lie, I was curious. She looked hot, so I added her. Next thing I know, she messages me. Said something about my cute smile and that I looked like someone who smells good. I didn't really know how to respond to that, but we started chatting. She was flirty and kind of sarcastic, which I liked. She told me she worked as a freelance model, red flag I ignored, and that she loved spontaneous people. When I told her I was down to meet up sometime, she hit me with how about Nando's tomorrow. Like straight up, didn't even wait. Nando's was cool. Not too expensive, chill vibe, and it didn't feel like I was trying too hard. I said yes, and we set it for 7 p.m. I showed up on time. I was actually early, which is rare for me. Wore this white t-shirt that I only pull out when I'm trying to look like I made some kind of effort, had even sprayed some Creed Aventus, which I couldn't even afford in the first place. I got a booth by the window and waited. She messaged saying she was almost there, which turned into 15 minutes. Then I saw someone walking toward me and my stomach straight up dropped. The girl from the profile photos. Yeah, this was not her. This was someone else entirely, and I don't mean, oh, she just didn't use updated pics. I mean, she looked like a different person. She was at least 80 pounds heavier than the pics, hair looked greasy and tied up in the messiest bun I've ever seen. And she had this hoodie with what looked like toothpaste stains near the collar. She plopped into the booth and grinned like everything was normal. I didn't know what to say. My brain was buffering. Then she said, "You're paying, right? I don't believe in women spending on dates. That's a man's job. We just need to show up and look pretty." No hello, no sorry I'm late, just that. And yeah, I was shook. I tried to play it cool and not react, even though everything in me wanted to just say nope and walk out. But I figured I'd just eat fast and leave. So I stayed. She asked if I'd ever been to Nando's before, but didn't wait for an answer before waving the waiter over and ordering the most expensive combo on the menu with all the extras. She added wings, halloumi, sides, drinks. It was like she hadn't eaten all day. I ordered something basic. I wasn't even hungry anymore, just confused. As soon as the food arrived, she started eating like it was a race. I tried making small talk, like asking her what modeling she did, but she just brushed it off and said, "Oh, mostly private clients." Then she went off on a full rant about how men don't know how to treat women anymore. She said her ex expected her to split bills and how disgusting that was. She called him a broke boy who couldn't handle a real woman. Halfway through chewing a wing, she leaned to the side and let out this massive fart. Like, not a quiet one. Not even one of those ones you can pretend didn't happen. It was loud, and the couple at the table behind us literally turned around. I was frozen. She laughed and said, "That one's from earlier. I had 2 Subway footlongs before I got here." I wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. She didn't even act embarrassed. In fact, she looked kind of proud of it. Then she kept going, talking about how bread makes her gassy and how being bloated is just part of being a hot girl. I didn't know where to look. My food was untouched. She was licking sauce off her fingers while telling me she expects her boyfriend to take care of her financially and emotionally, and preferably open a joint bank account within the first month. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You seem like you don't date a lot." That's okay, I like projects. I nearly choked on my water. When the bill came, I pulled out my card. I didn't even want to argue. I just wanted out. She leaned back in the booth and stretched like she'd just completed a marathon, then said something about sushi next time. I fake laughed and nodded, fully knowing there was never going to be a next time. We walked out, and she tried to side hug me in the parking lot, but I dodged it smoothly and said I had to grab something from the pharmacy. She said, "Cool, cool brosky doodle," and told me to text her later. Yeah, right, mate. As soon as I got in my car, I locked the doors and sat in silence for a full minute. I felt like I'd been in a fever dream. When I got home, I read through our old chats again. The flirty vibe, the filtered selfies, the fake confidence, all of it felt like bait. I saw her follow-up text pop in. I had fun. Next time you should take me somewhere fancier. And I'm a sushi girl, just so you know. I blocked her right there. That was the last time I ever agreed to meet someone from Facebook. Or honestly, anyone who doesn't have tagged photos. If I can't see at least 3 unfiltered pics with friends in different years, I'm not going. I also haven't been to Nando's since. Not because of the food, but because I can't look at a wing without hearing that fart echo in my head. The thing is, I didn't even want to go on this date. Not because Nathan was weird or anything. At least not at first. But more because I've been working a ton that week and honestly just wanted to rot in bed. But my best friend had been hyping me up nonstop about getting back out there. And Nathan had been messaging me for days with that overly polite, low-effort charm that's just chill enough to not be annoying. So I said fine, whatever, and agreed to meet up. We decided on this small Thai spot near my end of town. Not fancy, but had good food and zero chance of running into someone I knew. He'd offered to make the reservation, which I thought was decent. I figured even if the date sucked, I'd at least walk away with pad, seat U, and a Thai iced tea. So I showed up trying to keep an open mind. I was standing outside the place scrolling through messages when I saw someone waving at me from across the street. I waved back thinking that was him, and yep, there was Nathan. Black jeans, hoodie kind of tall, glasses, looked exactly like his pics for the most part. I was relieved, but then I noticed he wasn't alone. He was walking with this woman. She had short hair, a floral scarf, and the exact energy of someone who writes detailed Yelp reviews for fun. I figured maybe they were wrapping up a convo or something, but then they crossed the street together, both smiling. Then they walked toward me, both of them. I stood there like, what? Nathan walked up all excited and said, "Hey, this is my mom, Doreen." I thought it was a joke, like maybe he just bumped into her randomly and wanted to be polite. But no, she reached out to shake my hand and said something like, "I've heard so much about you," which already felt weird because we'd only been talking for 4 days. We walked into the restaurant, and I kept looking around like maybe there was a camera somewhere. They had booked a table for 3. 3. I sat across from them, directly in front of his mom, who immediately took control of the conversation like she was hosting a podcast episode titled Grilling My Son's Potential Girlfriend. She started asking me where I live, what I do for work, what kind of grades I got in school, like I was being interviewed for a job I didn't apply for. Nathan just sat there smiling like it was cute. I tried making eye contact with him to signal like, "Dude, are you serious right now?" But he just nodded like this was totally normal. I ordered something light. I didn't even feel hungry anymore. They both got curries, and she complained about the spice level before even tasting it. She said the words "back in my day" more than once. She told me about Nathan's childhood in so much detail I felt like I read his diary. Then, halfway through dinner, I tried to joke about how this was the first date I'd ever had with a third wheel. I said it lightly, like with a laugh, just trying to break the tension. Nathan immediately dropped his fork, leaned forward, and went, "If you can't love my mom, you can't love me." I legit froze. He said it like it was a warning. His mom smiled and nodded like this was something they rehearsed. I laughed again, thinking maybe this was some kind of awkward humor thing. But he wasn't joking. He said that any woman he dates has to be close with his mom and treat her like a second half. I sat there, staring down at my plate like it could help me out of the situation. He went on this whole monologue about how he and his mom are best friends, and how he's building his future with her guidance. Then he started explaining how he'd never date anyone who didn't also see his mom as an extension of the relationship. Not in a vague way either. Like he was talking about group vacations, shared passwords, holiday planning, the whole thing. Then he asked me, still during the meal, if I'd be comfortable staying at their house for family bonding weekends. Once we got serious, I hadn't even read the dessert menu and this dude was talking like we were planning a wedding. I asked kind of lightly if he always brought his mom on first dates. He looked genuinely confused and said, "Why wouldn't I?" He said she helped him read people and that she'd usually write about whether a relationship will work. Doreen smiled and said she didn't want to be the villain, but she didn't see much spark between me and Nathan. I nearly choked on my drink. Nathan looked sad for a second, then said, That's okay. We can try again. Maybe a double date next time with my uncle and his fiancée. You'd love him. At that point, I just wanted the bill. I offered to split it just to speed things up. Doreen said that was refreshing, because apparently Nathan's last date expected him to be a provider. I handed over my card without saying a word. My brain was done. Overstimulated, fried. We got up to leave, and outside the restaurant, Nathan tried to give me this weird side hug while his mom hovered nearby with this hopeful look on her face. He said he'd message me later and that we should all go hiking together next weekend if the weather was nice. I went home, sat on my bed, shoes still on, and just stared at the wall. His messages came in an hour later. Had a great time. And Mom liked you more than she expected, smiley face. I didn't respond. I didn't even block him. I just archived the chat like a digital burial. The next day, Doreen added me on Facebook. I declined it without even hesitating. I had awkward dates, boring dates, cheap ones, long ones, but never one where I felt like I was being adopted by a couple who already decided how my life was gonna look. Nathan wasn't even the worst part. It was the fact that he thought this whole situation made perfect sense. Anyway, I now ask every guy one important question before we even meet. Do you bring your mom on first dates? If the answer is anything other than immediate laughter, I'm out.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I met Amelia at a bookstore of all places. I was just trying to kill time after work, flipping through some random self-help book I had no intention of buying. She was in the same aisle, holding a thriller with this wild cover, and said something like, "That book ends badly." I looked up, and she was grinning at me like we'd known each other for a while. I thought it was cute, kind of bold, kind of random. We started talking mostly about books neither of us had actually finished. It was fast, smooth. She had this confidence that made you feel like saying no to her would be weird. She asked if I wanted to get coffee, and I said yeah without really thinking. It was weirdly easy with her. That's what caught me. We walked to this little cafe around the corner. She sat like she owned the place, threw her coat over the chair like it annoyed her, and ordered an espresso without looking at the menu. I got something basic. We talked for maybe 30 minutes, and then she just went, "You're interesting. Let's go on a proper date." Now, maybe I should have seen the red flags already. She didn't ask much about me, but she shared a ton about herself. Like, stuff people don't usually say in public. She told me she'd gotten bored of dating apps, that she was tired of predictable men, and how she preferred a bit of chaos. I should have clocked that, but I was tired, flattered, and kind of curious what a second round with her would be like. We had plans for the weekend. She picked a bar she liked, some dimly lit spot with overpriced cocktails and this weird smell of citrus and old wood. I showed up a bit early. She was already there, sitting at a booth with this drink that looked like it belonged at a Halloween party. Purple smoky, had something on fire in it. I slid into the seat across from her, and she looked me over like she was checking if I'd passed a test. She asked how my day was. I gave her some basic reply, and then she just dropped it. No warning, no build-up. She said, "So do you have a girlfriend?" I kinda laughed and said no, thinking maybe she was joking or trying to make a point about dating culture. But her face didn't change. She just nodded slowly and said, "Dan, that's disappointing. I usually don't go for single guys." I stared at her, not really sure what to say. I thought maybe she was messing with me, but she kept going. Told me she likes dating people who are already in relationships because it's more challenging and they're more emotionally developed. Said she loved the idea of being someone's secret. Said it gave her a reason to get dressed up. At first, I didn't know how to react. I just sat there sipping my drink like it was going to turn into water and save me. She asked if I had any exes I still talked to, or anyone I'd maybe consider faking a relationship with just for fun. Like it was a casual game. Then she asked, completely dead serious, if she could see my Instagram so she could scope out my dating history. I gave it to her out of curiosity, not thinking much of it. She scrolled for maybe 2 seconds and said, "You're too clean. No tags, no drama. This is disappointing." She looked genuinely let down. I asked her why she even agreed to go out with me if I wasn't her type, and she said she hoped I was lying about being single and that I might confess to something halfway through the night. Like it would excite her if I said I had a wife at home or something. She said it would have made things more interesting. Then, as casually as someone asking for the time, she asked if I had any friends who were taken. Said she'd love an intro. She wasn't even trying to flirt with me anymore. It was like she was doing market research. I should have left. Honestly, I should have just walked out the second she called single people boring. But I stayed there, sitting like a stunned extra in someone else's messed up scene. She kept talking like she was explaining a philosophy paper. She said that dating unavailable people meant no pressure, no labels, no messy conversations. She liked the drama. She called it emotional adrenaline. Said it kept her awake in the morning. I tried changing the topic, asked her what she does for work. She said she used to be in marketing but quit because she couldn't take orders from people with basic lives. Then she'd asked if I'd ever cheated on anyone. I said no, and she said, "So you've never really been in love?" Like that was the final word on that. The bartender came around again, and she ordered another round. I declined and said I had an early morning. She fake pouted and said I was too wholesome for my own good. Then she said, "You'd be more fun if I met you while you were engaged." That was the moment it really hit me. She wasn't being ironic. This was her actual thing. Her eyes lit up at the idea of stealing someone else's boyfriend like she was hunting trophies. When I stood up to leave, she asked if I considered pretending to be her taken boyfriend for a while so she could stir drama online. She said it'd be fun, and she'd even buy me a hoodie to wear and selfies. I didn't say a word, just shook my head, dropped a few bills on the table, and walked out. She messaged me the next day with a selfie of her kissing some guy's cheek with the caption, "Guess you weren't the one." I didn't reply. I don't even know how to explain that date to people. Like, how do you tell someone that the reason it didn't work out was because you were too single? Like, that was the issue. She wanted someone halfway into a breakup, or better yet, someone cheating. I wasn't broken enough for her. That's the part that stuck with me. Now, anytime someone asks me why I'm single, I just think of Amelia. The girl who saw my clean Instagram and said disgusting. The girl who didn't want a partner. She wanted a complication. A mess. Something to steal. If I'm being honest, I wasn't expecting much from Connor. Not in a bad way, just in that low expectation, dating app worn down type of way. His profile had the usual forest selfies, one blurry gym mirror shot, and a bio that said something like, "I appreciate honesty and traditional values." Which, looking back now, feels kind of hilarious. We matched on Hinge after he liked a photo of me at a farmer's market holding a peach. He commented something dumb like, "Bet that fruit's not as sweet as your smile," and I should have unmatched him right then. But it was a Sunday, I was bored, and he looked decent enough. We chatted for a few days, nothing too deep, mostly "how's your week been" kind of stuff, and eventually made plans to meet at this diner that stayed open past midnight. I love places like that. Greasy food, chill atmosphere, no pressure to dress up. I figured worst case, I'd get good fries out of it. He said he liked simple places with character, which sounded all right. I showed up in jeans and a hoodie, hair in a braid, no makeup. Just wasn't in the mood to impress anybody. He was already inside, sitting in a booth by the window, the water and a black coffee like he was planning a stakeout. I walked over and he stood up to shake my hand, which was kind of formal, but whatever. He had this serious look on his face, like we were about to discuss a custody agreement or something. We sat down, ordered. I had a burger. He had eggs and toast, which was strange for 9:30 at night, but I didn't say anything. The small talk lasted maybe 5 minutes before he hit me with it. Out of nowhere, completely casually, he says, "So I don't believe women should vote." I blinked. He said it like someone might say they're gluten-free or dull like horror movies. Just matter of fact, I stared at him, fork halfway in my mouth, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. He went straight into this speech about how society fell apart when women got too many rights. Said that men and women have divine roles, and that modern feminism ruined everything. I just sat there, staring at the mustard bottle, wondering how many times this man had said this out loud before and still managed to get second dates. I asked carefully what he meant by divine roles. He leaned in like he was about to reveal ancient secrets. He said men are meant to lead, provide, and protect, while women are meant to nurture, obey, and keep the home in balance. I wish I was making that up. I was mid-bite of my burger and genuinely considered choking on purpose just to get out of the date. He kept going, explaining how he doesn't want his future wife to work, that a real man provides so his woman can focus on the home. Then he asked me, serious as a heart attack, if I'd be open to giving up this whole independence thing. That was his actual phrasing. I asked him what he thought women should do if they want to have careers. He said those women are rejecting their biology. He told me that if I wanted to live a peaceful life, I'd be better off finding a man to serve and settling down as soon as possible. He said the problem with modern dating is women have too many opinions. I stared at him like he was a broken printer spitting out conspiracy theories. The worst part was how calm he was. Like he thought he was helping me, blessing me with the truth or something. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even trying to be dramatic. He genuinely believed everything he was saying. Like he'd read some blog post written in 2008 by a divorced guy living in his mom's basement and decided it was gospel. I tried switching the subject to movies. He said he doesn't watch films directed by women because they're too emotional. I asked him what kind of music he likes. He said mostly instrumental stuff because lyrics by female artists send the wrong message. At one point, I asked if he'd ever actually dated a woman long term. He said yes, and then casually mentioned that he broke up with his last girlfriend because she got a job promotion and started acting above her role. She got a raise. He dumped her for it. He asked me if I could cook. I said yeah, sometimes. He asked if I'd be willing to cook every night. I laughed. He didn't. He said, a woman's love is shown through meals and obedience. I've never wanted to throw a plate of fries at someone more in my life. When the check came, he said he believed in paying because men are providers. Then he added, but it only counts if the woman is worth providing for. I said nothing, just waited for the bill, slapped down a 20, and stood up. He seemed surprised I was leaving so soon. Asked if I wanted to walk around a bit after. I told him I had laundry to do, which was a lie, but also somehow more appealing than listening to another minute of his weird sermon on how women ruined the West. He texted me later that night, said he enjoyed our dynamic and felt like we had potential. I blocked him before he could send another sentence. What's wild is that I'm sure there's people out there who'd agree with everything he said. But sitting across from him, listening to someone calmly list all the reasons they think you're only valuable as a quiet cook with no job and no opinions. Yeah, that was a new level of exhausting. Now I Google every guy I meet before going out. I don't care if it makes me look like a stalker. I will never again sit through a meal while someone tells me I'm biologically designed to serve. So that's the story of how I went out for a burger and ended up being offered a job as a live-in maid with no rights. So this one started weird and just kept getting weirder. I was sitting on the floor in my room, scrolling through Hinge, just mindlessly swiping while Netflix played in the background. Wasn't even looking for anyone to be real. I just read some cringy DM from a dude who called me Milady, and I needed to cleanse my timeline. Then I saw Medea's profile and then paused. She had this moody vibe going on, dark eyeliner, books in the background of her mirror selfies, that pose where it looks like you're about to drop a poetry line. Not gonna lie, she looked good. Her bio said something like, don't waste my time, I don't play games, which should have been my first hint, but I was bored and she was hot. I swiped right. We matched instantly. The convo started kind of stiff. She typed in full sentences like she was submitting a school assignment, which made me think she'd either roast me for bad grammar or ghost me after 2 replies. But then she cracked a joke about how most guys on Hinge looked like they'd steal your charger and never return it. It was oddly specific and kind of hilarious. I replied. She double texted. We kept talking. I thought, all right, maybe this one's worth meeting. We agreed to get bubble tea. Chill, low commitment. I showed up at the place first and waited outside. She walked up 10 minutes late, wearing all black like she was going to a fashion funeral. Black hoodie, black cargo pants, black shoes. I said, hey, and she just looked me up and down and said, you're taller than I thought, then walked in. No smile. No, nice to meet you, just vibes. Inside, we grabbed drinks and sat near the window. She had this way of leaning forward that made everything she said feel intense. I'd ask her basic stuff, where she's from, what she does, and she'd flip the convo back on me like an interview. What do you think the point of dating is? Would you call yourself emotionally available? How many sisters do you have? I told her I had 2. She froze. Like dead silent for 5 whole seconds. Then she made a face and said, oh, you have sisters. I said, yeah, what about it? She blinked real slow and sipped her drink like she was disappointed in me. I asked if that was a bad thing, and she said, I don't date men with sisters. It's a boundary I have. I laughed because I thought she was joking, but no, she was serious. She said guys who grow up with sisters end up soft and emotionally weird because they're trained to sympathize with women too much. I genuinely didn't know what to say. I just sat there with my cup half full of lychee tea and regret. She kept going like she'd been dying to get this read out. Said she dated 3 guys who had sisters and all of them were too understanding and lacked dominance. Her words, not mine. Then she looked me dead in the face and said, if we're going to keep talking, you have to create some distance with them. I asked what that meant. She said, not cut them off completely, obviously, but definitely put up boundaries. Stop being so emotionally available to other women. It's not healthy. I sat back like, what the hell? She said it like she was asking me to stop drinking soda or delete Snapchat. Just casual, like it wasn't completely insane. I asked her if she had brothers. She said no, and proudly added that she doesn't even have close female friends because she finds most women fake. Said she prefers being around guys who haven't been feminized by their sisters' emotions. I kept trying to switch topics, asked about her favorite shows, music, whatever, but she kept looping back to her theory about siblings. She said that men who grow up with only brothers are more confident, more assertive, and less conflicted. Then she asked, would you be willing to create that space for me? It wasn't even subtle at that point. She was asking me to distance myself from my actual sisters so she'd feel more comfortable dating me. I sat there staring at her black nails tapping against her drink cup and wondered how fast I could leave without making it obvious. Then she started going off about relationship hygiene. That was the phrase she used. Said men shouldn't be emotionally entangled with too many women outside their relationship, even if it's family. She said sisters cause emotional confusion in men and prevent them from being focused protectors. I literally don't even know what that means, but she said it like it was scientific fact. At this point, I wasn't even trying to hide my confusion. I asked her straight up if she'd ever told a guy to stop talking to his sister. She said yes, and she was proud of it. Said he did it too. Stopped going to family dinners, stopped calling his sister for advice. She said their relationship got way better after that, until he cheated on her. I asked if maybe that was a red flag. She said no, it was his sister's influence lingering in his brain. I finished my drink fast and told her I had to get up early the next day. She just nodded and said, let me know if you think you can set boundaries with your sisters. If not, no hard feelings. Like this was a business deal. As I walked to my car, I kept thinking about what kind of mental gymnastics someone has to do to turn sibling relationships into red flags. I got in the car and just sat there, holding the steering wheel like it could explain what just happened. She texted me that night and said, you're not a bad guy. You just have emotional clutter. I blocked her and immediately called my older sister to tell her the whole thing. She laughed for 10 straight minutes. I still think about it sometimes when people say dating's not that bad. It's not about getting rejected or ghosted anymore. It's about being told your actual family is a deal breaker. Like you show up for bubble tea and walk out feeling like you need to apologize for having siblings. That was Medea. You ever have one of those weeks where everything feels just off? Like not terrible, but nothing's really clicking. That was me when I met Jack. My days were dragging. I was tired of work, tired of people, tired of dating apps giving me people who said, I love deep convos, but then answered with one-word replies. I'd almost deleted the whole thing until Jack popped up. His profile was just chill. Nothing overly flashy, no shirtless gin pics, no forced quotes pretending to be profound. He had a goofy smile in most of his photos, and there was one pic of him playing with a dog in a field, which gave him major not trying too hard energy. His bio was like 3 lines, one of which said emotionally stable-ish, and that made me laugh. We started talking, and it was decent. He wasn't trying to impress me, and that made him stand out. His jokes were hit or miss, but he was upfront, and I appreciated that. After a few days of talking, he asked if I wanted to grab a drink at this bar near the waterfront. Said it wasn't fancy, but had decent music and a weird amount of arcade machines. It sounded random enough to be fun. So we picked a Friday night, and I showed up about 5 minutes late because I missed a turn and ended up in a parking lot behind a warehouse. I walked into the bar expecting the usual awkward first date tension, but what I got instead was Jack waving at me from a booth, with a girl sitting next to him. I froze at the entrance for a second because I thought maybe I had mixed up the name with a guy. But nope, he waved again, big smile on his face, and the girl next to him looked up and smiled too. I walked over and he stood up and said, "Hey, this is my ex Claire." I just stared at them. He said it like that was a totally normal sentence. I sat down slowly, like maybe there was a twist coming. Claire was sipping a soda and looking around the bar like she didn't want to be there. Jack leaned in like we were already deep in the convo and goes, "So, just full transparency. Claire's my emotional support buddy. She comes with me on first dates." I thought I misheard him. I looked at Claire, then back at Jack. He was sipping his drink like he just told me the weather. I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, "Well, dating's kind of high stress for me, and Claire knows how I am, so she comes along to help keep me grounded." Claire, to her credit, looked just as tired of this situation as I was. She gave me a shrug and said, "He gets awkward and weird if I'm not here." I tried to laugh, thinking maybe this was some kind of prank or bet or social experiment, but no one laughed back. I asked how long they'd been broken up. Jack said about 4 months. I asked if she always came on his dates. He said not always, but often. Sometimes she waits outside in the car. I almost walked out right then, but something in me, maybe morbid curiosity, made me stay a little longer. After a few minutes, Jack excused himself to go to the bathroom, and I was left sitting with his ex at the bar table. It was the weirdest standoff ever. Claire looked at me and said, "I told him this was a bad idea, by the way." I said, "You think?" And she just sipped her drink again. She wasn't even mean, just deeply, visibly done. I asked if she was still in love with him. She laughed and said, "God, no. But he's got this whole thing about trusting new people, and he gets anxious if he doesn't have a familiar presence." His words, not mine. I sat there wondering what the actual hell I was doing. This wasn't even a date anymore. It was like I got pulled into someone's weird group therapy session without signing a waiver. I looked around the bar, saw people laughing, eating, playing pool, and meanwhile I'm over here trying to bond with the ex of the guy I haven't even known for a full week. Jack came back and sat down like everything was chill. Asked me if I liked the music. I said yeah, it was fine. He said, "Cool, so do you see this going somewhere?" I straight up blinked. You bring your ex on a date and then ask me if I feel a vibe. I told him I wasn't sure what kind of connection he was looking for if he couldn't even meet someone new without backup. He said he thought this would show emotional maturity. He said it was better than hiding stuff and that most guys wouldn't be this honest. I told him that honesty isn't the problem. It's the fact that I showed up to meet him, and now I was in a bar with his ex watching him bob his head to lo-fi jazz while waiting for mozzarella sticks. He didn't get it. Claire stood up and said she was going to go way outside. Jack looked kind of lost for a second, then told her not to leave yet. She rolled her eyes and walked out anyway. Jack looked at me and said, "I know this was untraditional, but you're really cool and I'd like to see you again. Just maybe without Claire next time." I didn't even answer. I just picked up my bag, said, "Good luck," and walked out before he could say another word. I passed Claire on the way out. She looked at me and said, "Told you." Later that night, he messaged me and said he felt like we really clicked and he hoped the support thing wasn't a deal breaker. I didn't even reply. I didn't block him either. I just read the message and left it hanging there like a weird little reminder of the night I got third wheeled by a couple who wasn't even together anymore. To this day, I have no idea if he ever went on a date without her again. Maybe she's still out there in parking lots, drinking flat soda while Jack tries to make a new connection with someone else who wasn't warmed in advance. All right, so this one felt off from the second I left the house. You know when you're getting dressed for something casual, but your gut's like, bro, don't even go. That was me. I was halfway through tying my shoes and already over it. But I committed to the plan, and Amanda had been hyping it all week, so I figured maybe I was just being dramatic. I met her on some app I'd re-downloaded during a Sunday hangover spiral. You know how it goes. You sit there, slightly dizzy, questioning life, and think, maybe I need love or whatever. Her profile had no filters, just her with a camera, always holding it like she was about to vlog something. One of the pics was her pointing a mic at her dog. I should have known. She messaged first, said I had documentary energy. I didn't even know what that meant. We talked for a bit, mostly random stuff. Movies, relationships, worst dates. She said she hated people who fake things and was all about raw connection. I thought that just meant honesty. I had no clue she meant literal recorded connection. We set up a plan to meet at this local burger joint downtown that tries too hard to look vintage. They got chalkboard menus and string lights inside, and all the staff dressed like it's 1997. I'd been once before, and it was all right, overpriced, but solid fries. Amanda picked the spot, said it had visual character. I didn't ask what that meant. I pulled up and texted her that I was out front. No reply. So I went in and told the guy at the counter I was meeting someone. He pointed toward the back booth like he knew the deal already. I walked over and there she was, Amanda, already sitting, already sipping a lemonade, and already holding her phone up like she was live streaming. I sat down and she didn't even say hi properly. She was mid-sentence talking to her camera, saying something like, "Okay, so here he is. First impressions, solid witty choice. We'll rate him after the appetizer." I thought she was joking. She turned the camera slightly so it faced both of us, said my name, then winked. That's when I realized she wasn't kidding. This wasn't just a date. This was an episode. I tried laughing it off like, okay, maybe this is some bit she's doing, some quirky, ha, I'm a YouTuber moment. But then she started asking me serious questions while the phone was still up. Like where I live, what my last relationship was like, how much I make per year. Not even in a casual way. Just straight up interrogation. I asked if she could put the phone away. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's just for my raw relationship series. No edits, no filters. Just honesty." Then she flipped the camera back to herself and said to her viewers, "He's already uncomfortable. This might be a short episode." That's when I realized it wasn't even just being filmed, it was being broadcast, live. I asked her if she'd told people about this ahead of time, and she said, if I did, it wouldn't be raw. I told her I didn't agree to be streamed. She said it was her platform, and if I had nothing to hide, it shouldn't matter. She wasn't even being mean about it. That made it worse. She said it like she believed it 100%, like filming strangers without their consent was just part of dating now. The server came over, saw the phone, and just sighed. I guess this wasn't Amanda's first raw episode at this place. We ordered. She got sweet potato fries and a vegan burger. I ordered something with meat mostly out of spite. While we waited for food, she started reading comments from her live stream, like out loud. One viewer said I looked stiff. Another said I seemed uncomfortable, but maybe deep. Amanda laughed at that one and said, "He's definitely giving layered energy." Then she looked at me and asked if I was nervous because I had secrets or if I just wasn't used to being seen. I told her I didn't like being filmed, and she hit me with, "That sounds like a you thing. I'm just being present." Then she asked if she could do a moment of silence on camera to catch our vibe without words. She literally held the phone up and just stared at me. I sat there awkwardly, not knowing where to look. After like 10 seconds, she said, The energy's muted. Might be trauma." Food came, thank God. I thought that might distract her, but nope. She filmed the food, gave a review on the bun texture, and then turned the camera back toward me and asked what I'd do if my future wife got famous. Would I feel emasculated? I said I didn't care about fame. She said that was an answer full of avoidance. I asked her how many people were watching. She checked and said only around 150 today, slow night. I nearly choked on my drink. I asked again, flat out this time, if she could stop filming just while we ate. She said, "It's part of the experience. It's a real connection. It should be able to withstand being witnessed." I said it wasn't a connection if one person didn't even agree to it. She paused, looked at the screen, and then asked the chat if she should stop filming. I couldn't believe it. She handed my personal comfort over to strangers in the comments like it was up for a vote. One guy typed, "Keep going, it's just getting good." Another said, "He's too sensitive, let her cook." Amanda said, "All right, the people have spoken." I stood up. I didn't even touch the food. She looked up like I just ruined the ending of a show. I told her I was done. She said, this could have been such a strong arc. I didn't even reply. I walked out and blocked her before I got to my car. The next day, a friend sent me a clip someone had screen recorded. Amanda had uploaded it under a title like "When He's Hot but Emotionally Guarded." The comments were brutal. Half of them said I was boring. One guy said I blinked too much. Some girl called me a man with no main character energy. That was the day I started asking every new match one question before agreeing to meet. Are you planning to film me for content? If the answer isn't an immediate no, I'm out. This one honestly felt like getting punked by the universe, not in a funny way. Like in the way where you're sitting there mid-date thinking, no way this is real life right now. I wasn't even trying to date seriously my match with Tyler. I was just in that floating space between not wanting to be alone and not wanting anyone to actually text me too much. But he seemed chill at first. Normal. That's all I wanted. Just normal. His photos were all decent. One was him on a hike, another at a rooftop bar, and the rest were just him smiling in regular clothes. No shirtless flexing, no bathroom selfies. His bio was some dumb quote about confidence being the foundation of greatness, which sounded corny, but whatever. Confidence isn't a crime. He messaged me first, said he liked my playlist screenshot, and asked if I was more of a lyrics or beat person. Kind of thoughtful. Not annoying, so we chatted. He was smooth, I'll give him that. Not like Ferdy smooth, more like polished, like he'd been through enough convos to know exactly how much to say and when to stop texting to leave me hanging a little. I'd noticed it, but I didn't hate it. I figured maybe he just had game. We set a plan to grab dinner. I picked this Mexican place near my place. Casual, but not fast food. He said cool, didn't question it. The day comes. I get there 5 minutes early. He's already waiting, sitting outside at a table with 2 glasses of water like we were at a pre-interview. He stood up when I walked over, gave me a hug, and said, "You're cuter than your pics." I know that line should have made me cringe, but again, delivery was solid, like too solid. We sit, order food, everything feels okay. He's asking me questions, nodding in all the right places, and dropping in little compliments like they were casual observations. You got a really calm voice, or that color looks gray on you. I remember thinking, damn, maybe I underestimated this one. Then we're halfway through the appetizer when the vibe shifts. He says, I should probably let you know something. I'm thinking he's about to drop that he has a kid, or maybe he's moving soon. But nope. He goes, I'm actually using this date as content for a course I'm building. I asked what he meant. He smiled like this was the exciting part. He leans in and says, I teach guys how to talk to women. I'm building a program about masculine energy and dominance and dating, and I'm filming these dates, not video, just audio, to use as part of my coaching. My brain just froze. I literally had to replay the sentence in my head. I asked him if he was joking. He said no, and that I should feel honored because most of the girls he uses for date modules are low-effort matches. But apparently, I had first date potential. He said that last part like it was a compliment. I asked him if he was recording me. He pointed to this tiny mic clipped inside his jacket. Said it only picked up voices, not background noise. He said he'd edit out my name and any sensitive stuff. He even had the nerve to say, you seem self-aware enough to be fine with it. I was floored. Like, actually sitting there with my mouth slightly open trying to figure out if I should walk out or throw the salsa in his face. He didn't even look embarrassed, just proud. He went on this whole tangent about how modern men don't know how to lead in relationships and how he's helping them reclaim confidence through structured dominance. Said that women want to be led, they just don't say it out loud. I asked him if every woman he's dated knows he's doing this. He said some do, some don't, but he gets consent in spirit. Like, what does that even mean? He said, most people post their lives online anyway. This is just for educational growth. I asked him if he made money from this course. He said he charged $300 per client and was working on a premium version that included live footage and conversation breakdowns. Like he was ESPN for toxic dating. I sat there, half listening, half watching the couple next to us laughing over margaritas, wondering how I'd ended up across from the human version of a Reddit thread no one asked for. He started asking me stuff like, do you usually go for more dominant men or softer ones? I didn't answer. He said, don't worry, I can already tell. Then he made a note in his phone. He legit took his phone out of the table and started typing, nodding like I was a podcast guest dropping wisdom. The server came over to check on us, and I almost asked him to help me escape. I didn't even want to finish my tacos. I just kept drinking water and trying not to flip the table. At one point, Tyler asked if I wanted to do a role play exercise, where he pretends we're arguing and he guides the conversation to a masculine resolution. I thought he was joking again. He wasn't. He even gave me a prompt. Said I should pretend I was upset he didn't text back, and he'd show me how real men resolve emotional chaos. I pushed my chair back and said I needed to use the restroom. Walked straight out the side door and into the night air like I'd escaped a cult. He texted me an hour later saying, "Great session. Let me know if you want to be part of the advanced program. You'd be a great test subject." I didn't respond. Didn't even block him. I wanted to keep the messages as proof in case someone ever asks me what the worst date I've ever been on was. And yeah, I told all my friends. One of them actually found his course online. It was real. His site had testimonials like Hadler's approach changed my mindset. Women finally respect me. Respect? Bro, I wanted to report you. Now I've got a new rule. If a guy shows up and says anything about energy, dominance, or building a brand, I leave. So here's how it started. I was in a random Discord call with some old friends from uni, and someone dared me to go on 3 dates in 1 week. I've been single for a while, mostly because dating apps felt like job interviews with worse questions, but I figured fine. 1 week, 3 dates, no expectations. I re-downloaded Hinge. Nicole was the first one I matched with. She stood out because she was blunt. Like no warm-up, no small talk. First message she sent was, "You seem interesting enough, let's go out." I was into it. Something about how direct she was just worked in the moment. Her profile had messy mirror selfies, one pic of her with a massive cocktail, and a short bio that said, "I hate small talk, but I love chaos." That should have been a red flag, but I wasn't in the mood to overthink. We set a plan for a Tuesday night. Chill bar downtown, live music, cheap drinks. I picked it because it wasn't loud enough to make conversation impossible, but still had energy. She said, "Cool. I'll be the one in leopard print." That also should have been a red flag. I got there early because I had this weird habit of checking out the place before the other person arrives. I like to scope where the exits are, the lighting, the bathroom situation. Not because I'm paranoid. I just like to know what I'm working with. 10 minutes in, Nicole walks through the door like she's on a mission. Hair up, bright lipstick, leopard print jacket over ripped jeans, and this walk that screamed, main character entering. I waved and she spotted me fast. She sat down across from me and the first thing she said was, "I took 2 shots in the Uber. I need courage to deal with strangers." Cool start. Then she pulled out her phone and said, "Hope you don't mind. I'm live streaming this. I want to see if the internet thinks we're a match." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She opened Instagram and pointed the camera right at me. Didn't even ask my handle. Just said, "All right, this is him." Then panned down my outfit and added, "He's wearing a black jacket. Looks like he might ghost me. We'll see." At that point, I should have gotten up. But I didn't. I froze like a deer watching someone paint a target on its back. She started asking me questions, rapid fire. Where do you live? How tall are you without shoes? How much do you make? Would you ever let your girlfriend have an OnlyFans? And she wasn't even looking at me half the time. She was staring at her screen, laughing at the comments coming in. Some guy wrote, "He looks nervous." Another said, "He's giving good guy with trauma energy." She read them out loud, laughing while sipping whatever drink she'd already ordered before I showed up. I didn't even get a chance to order mine. I tried to get her attention, asked if she could put the phone away. She said, "Babe, this is part of my brand. I document real things. Raw moments. Don't you want people to see who you really are?" She leaned in, pointed her camera right at my face, and asked her followers to rate my looks on a scale of 1 to 10. I felt like a zoo animal, sitting there trying not to flip the table. She kept asking the weirdest questions, like if I'd be cool with dating someone who had a criminal record, or how I'd feel if she wanted to move in after 3 weeks. Then she asked, "Would you fight someone for me tonight?" Like right now, I laughed. She didn't. Some guy on the stream commented, "Tell him to take his jacket off. See if he has boyfriend shoulders." She read it, turned to me and said, "Well, let's see the shoulders." I said no. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're shy." Then she told her followers to send emoji reactions if they thought it was boring. She started getting flame emojis and the little poop ones. She thought it was hilarious. At one point, she turned the phone on herself and said, "Okay guys, I'm gonna step away for a second, but stay on. I'll be right back." Then she just left. Walked off without even saying where she was going. I sat there alone with her phone still pointed at me on the little stand she'd brought. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to move. I looked around like maybe someone else was watching this unfold and could step in and end the simulation. I sat there for 20 minutes, no joke. 20. When she finally came back, she was holding another drink and a slice of pizza from some spot down the street. Just walked in eating it. Didn't offer me any. Said, "Sorry, I needed something greasy. Tequila always makes me crave carbs." She sat down, looked at her phone, and said, "Wow, 500 people are still watching. You must be cuter than I thought." I stood up. She asked where I was going. I told her I didn't sign up for a live stream and that this felt like a prank. She said, "You're taking this way too seriously. It's 2025, this is normal now." "No, Nicole, it's not." I left. Didn't even pretend to go to the bathroom or make an excuse. Just walked out. She yelled after me, "Wow, insecure much." Blocked her before I even got to the car. Later that night, someone DM'd me on Instagram. Some random account with a profile pic of a raccoon in a hoodie. They sent me a clip from the live stream. It was Nicole talking to her viewers saying he had potential but couldn't handle the attention. Men always want to be seen until they actually are. The comments under it were wild. One guy said I was too private for my own good. Another said, "He's cute, but he's got no online presence." Red flag. I couldn't believe what I was reading. One person actually asked if I was single, like in the comments, during a live stream that had just humiliated me. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, ate leftovers from my fridge, and watched 3 episodes of some cartoon I used to love as a kid just to reset my brain. I don't even know how to start this one because it still makes me laugh, but not in a good way. It's that kind of laugh where you're just so done that your brain can't even process it properly, like full mental buffering. The kind of date that makes you sit on the train ride home staring out the window like you're in the middle of a music video. So anyway, here's how I ended up sitting across from Eduardo while he explained to me, with a totally straight face, why women with jobs are destroying the natural order. We matched on Bumble. That's already unusual for me because I usually stay off that app. I feel like the energy on there is weird, like everyone's trying to network more than actually date. But I was on a lunch break, had nothing better to do, and Eduardo's profile came up. He had that "I might own a vintage motorcycle" kind of vibe. Beard, flannel, a photo of him holding a dog that looked like it could win a staring contest. His bio said, "I work hard, play hard, and believe in old school values." That should made me pause, but my brain just focused on dog. We started talking and the convo was decent. A little dry, but he seemed grounded. Said he worked in logistics, liked to cook, and loved a woman who knows her worth. Okay, cool. That's vague but safe. He asked me what I did, and I told him I was in media and marketing. He replied, "Interesting choice for a woman," with a laughing emoji. I ignored that, my fault. He asked if I wanted to meet up for dinner. Picked this mid-range Italian place that I had been to once. Not bad, kind of old school, but with those little wine bottles with candles stuck in them. He made a reservation and texted me that morning to confirm, which I appreciated. I got there on time, and so did he. That always earns points for me. He looked exactly like his pics, which also helped. Tall, put together, smelled like cedar or some expensive cologne you can only find in those shops where nothing has a price tag. We sat, ordered drinks, and started talking about random stuff. Weekend plans, favorite movies, food preferences. Basic first date stuff. Then he asked me again what I did. I explained it a little more this time, talking about the campaigns I've worked on, and he nodded slowly, like I was telling him I built rocket ships or something. Then he said, "So when do you plan on quitting?" I laughed, thought he was messing with me. He wasn't. He looked dead serious and repeated it like, "If we ended up together, would you still work?" I asked him what he meant. He said, "I don't date women who plan to have careers after marriage. It ruins the family structure." Now I wish I could tell you I had some witty, powerful clapback ready to go, but I just sat there for a second trying to figure out if I misheard him. He went on, calmly like this was totally normal, and said he believed a man should be the provider, and a woman's place is in the home, raising the kids, managing the house, and being emotionally available at all times. That was the actual phrase he used, emotionally available at all times. I asked him what he thought women did before men let them stay home. He said those women were overexerted and too masculine, like we were horses. I asked if his mom worked. He said no, proudly. Said she served the family and that's why he respects her. He said his last relationship ended because the girl refused to quit her job after 6 months. 6 months. He said she was too ambitious and he couldn't build a future with someone who idolized independence. I asked him what he'd expect if his partner actually wanted to work. He said, then she can do that, but we won't be together. Like it was just facts. No emotion in it. Like I just asked if he wanted ketchup on his fries. Then he flipped it and said, why would you want to work if you had a man who could take care of you? I said I like what I do. I've worked hard to build it. He shrugged and said, you like being taken care of more. You just don't know it yet. I wanted to throw my pasta in his face. I didn't, obviously, because the garlic bread was fire and I wasn't about to waste that, but my fingers were gripping the fork real tight. He kept talking. Told me that 2 incomes create confusion in households and that children need one consistent caretaker, the mother. I said, what if the dad's the caretaker? He said that would be emasculating. He said that word like it burned his tongue. Then he asked, super casually, if I'd be okay deleting all my work social media and transitioning out of my job if this gets serious. I said, we're halfway through a plate of ravioli, relax. He laughed, but not like it was funny. More like he was disappointed I didn't just agree. At that point, I decided to wrap it up. I asked for the check, but he waved it off and paid. Said, I always take care of the bill. That's what men do. As we walked outside, he said, this went well. I think we have potential. Just think about what it'd be like to be with a man who handles everything. I smiled, said, you definitely handle something, and walked off before he could finish his response. He texted me later that night with some long paragraph about not being offended if I wasn't ready for a man like him. I didn't reply. I read it, laughed, screenshotted it, and sent it to my group chat. The next morning, he sent another message saying he was praying I find clarity. Bro, the only clarity I found was how fast I'd run if I ever saw him again. So this wasn't even supposed to be a date, technically. I didn't go into it thinking we were meeting for romantic vibes. It started as a friend hangout. You know how sometimes someone says, you and so would get along, and then suddenly you're roped into a weird coffee meetup that has accidental date energy. That was this. My coworker, Hannah, was the one who set it up. She said Lindsay was quirky and super smart, but had trouble finding people who got her, which now I understand completely. But at the time, I just thought it was being nice by saying yes. We met at this weird antique bookstore cafe combo. Place smelled like old wood and dust with a side of espresso. It was one of those spots with chairs that didn't match and paintings of creepy kids on the walls. The vibe was straight out of a slow burn thriller. I got there first and ordered tea, sat near the window, trying to look approachable but not overly eager. Lindsay showed up wearing this trench coat like she'd just stepped off a crime drama set. Her hair was in a loose braid, and she had this massive messenger bag that looked like it weighed more than her. She didn't say hi right away. She looked around the room first like she was scanning for exits. Then she sat down across from me and said, you don't look like a killer, so that's good. I laughed kind of nervously. She didn't. She ordered a black coffee and asked if I'd ever been fingerprinted. That was the first 5 minutes. I thought maybe it was a joke or she was into true crime or something. A lot of people are, right? But no, she was serious. She asked if I had a good alibi for that morning. I said I'd been working. She nodded and said, that's what they always say. The weird part, she was chill about it, like she was asking normal small talk questions. She started talking about unsolved cases like they were celebrity gossip. Told me she once helped someone lie to police as an experiment, then laughed and said, don't worry, I wasn't the one under suspicion. And she asked if I'd ever been a witness to a crime. I said no. She said, you probably wouldn't know if you had. Sometimes you're just near something and you don't even realize it until later. I took a long sip of my tea and nodded like that made total sense. She pulled a notebook out of her bag and started jotting things down mid-convo. I asked what she was writing. She said she liked to document people's answers in case anything came up later. Like, later in what scenario? I didn't ask. I was afraid of the answer. Then she leaned in and said, you photograph well in a police report. That was the actual sentence, not a joke, not part of the story. Just dropped it mid-sip like it was casual. I tried to shift the conversation, asked what she did for work. She said she used to work at a law firm but left because she didn't want to be on the wrong side of things. That was all she gave me. No details. No company name. Just that. Then she started listing weird facts about criminals. Not like trivia. More like psychological profiles. She told me the most common birthday month for serial killers, how long it takes for a missing person report to be taken seriously in different states, and what brand of duct tape has the strongest hold. Again, none of this in a jokey way. It was like she was prepping me for a role I didn't audition for. I asked her if she was into forensics or criminology. She said no, she just liked being aware of how stories are built. And she asked what I would do if I woke up and someone framed me for something I didn't do. I said, get a lawyer. She said, too slow, you'd be in jail by then. I started mentally calculating how long I had to stay before leaving wouldn't look rude. I still thought maybe this was just how she broke the ice, like maybe she was super awkward and this was her way of connecting. But then she started asking if I'd ever worn gloves in public to avoid leaving prints. I said, yeah, in winter. She said, no, I mean like for real, on purpose. I just stared at her. Then she looked at me serious again and said, don't take me seriously, by the way. None of this means anything. Cool, totally reassuring. She reached into her bag and pulled out a tiny camera, one of those old digital ones from like 2008, and asked if she could take a photo of me, just in case this turns into something interesting later. I told her no. She looked disappointed but didn't argue. Just nodded and started writing again. I said I had to get going because I had errands. She looked at the time and said, that's smart. People always remember the last place you were seen. I stood up like my chair was on fire. She smiled and said, this was fun. You're pretty normal. I said thanks, I think, then walked out trying not to sprint. When I told Hannah about it later, she laughed and said, oh yeah, Lindsay's kind of intense but harmless. I asked her why she didn't mention the whole you might end up in a case file energy. She said, well, you said you like girls who are deep. I blocked Lindsay's number that night. No message, just gone. The next morning, I got a text from a random number saying, thanks for your time. You gave some interesting answers. I won't use your face for anything without permission. I sat there, half listening, half watching the couple next to us laughing over margaritas, wondering how I'd ended up across from the human version of a Reddit thread no one asked for. He started asking me stuff like, do you usually go for more dominant men or softer ones? I didn't answer. He said, don't worry, I can already tell. Then he made a note in his phone. He legit took his phone out of the table and started typing, nodding like I was a podcast guest dropping wisdom. The server came over to check on us, and I almost asked him to help me escape. I didn't even want to finish my tacos. I just kept drinking water and trying not to flip the table. At one point, Tyler asked if I wanted to do a role play exercise, where he pretends we're arguing and he guides the conversation to a masculine resolution. I thought he was joking again. He wasn't. He even gave me a prompt. Said I should pretend I was upset he didn't text back, and he'd show me how real men resolve emotional chaos. I pushed my chair back and said I needed to use the restroom. Walked straight out the side door and into the night air like I'd escaped a cult. He texted me an hour later saying, great session. Let me know if you want to be part of the advanced program. You'd be a great test subject. I didn't respond. Didn't even block him. I wanted to keep the messages as proof in case someone ever asks me what the worst date I've ever been on was. And yeah, I told all my friends. One of them actually found his course online. It was real. His site had testimonials like Tyler's approach changed my mindset. Women finally respect me. Respect? Bro, I wanted to report you. Now I've got a new rule. If a guy shows up and says anything about energy, dominance, or building a brand, I leave. I don't think I've ever walked out of a restaurant more confused than I did after my date with Dylan. Like, it wasn't just, oh, that was bad, confused. I mean, full on, was that real life or some kind of prank? Confused. It felt like I'd stepped into a social experiment I didn't agree to, which, turns out, is exactly what happened. So the setup was pretty normal. I matched with Dylan on Hinge during that weird lull in spring where everyone's either trying to start a new relationship or recover from one. His profile looked clean. Good lighting, normal poses, nothing screaming red flag. One pic of him at a museum, one of him holding a dog, and another of him in the kitchen making pancakes. Classic starter pack. He had this kind of nerdy vibe that I don't usually go for, but I was in a maybe I should try something different mood. You know, when you get tired of your type and decide to switch it up like it's a playlist. He messaged first, said something about a book in my profile photo. We talked for a bit, and honestly, he was funny. Not trying too hard, not sending memes every 2 seconds, just a solid normal back and forth. I figured why not grab dinner and see what he was like in person. He picked a quiet Italian place. Not fancy, just low lighting and jazz playing in the background. I liked the choice. I showed up a little late because traffic was a mess. He was already there, sitting at a booth in the back, wearing this dark green sweater and looking like someone's TA. He smiled when I walked in and stood up to greet me, which was sweet. He pulled my chair out. The whole thing felt very first date standard, which I appreciated. The conversation started fine. He asked how my day was. We talked about our jobs, swapped horror stories about working in open plan offices. He told me he used to work in marketing but recently shifted toward research. I asked him what kind, and he said human behavior and social analysis. I didn't think much of it. Sounded vague but smart. We ordered food, and the waiter brought out breadsticks, and that's when things started to go weird. Dylan leaned forward, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "So before we go any further, I feel like I should be upfront about something." My stomach dropped a little because nobody says that unless they're about to ruin the night. He paused, then said, "This date is technically part of a study I'm conducting." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He pulled out a clipboard from under the table, an actual clipboard, and showed me a printed form with boxes and bullet points. I didn't even know what I was looking at first. It had question categories like response to discomfort, perception of social pressure, and behavior under surprise, ethical violation. I blinked and said, "What is this?" He told me he was gathering data for a study he's been running on how people behave when they're suddenly informed they're being observed in romantic settings. His whole thing, apparently, is that modern dating creates fake versions of people, and he wants to study how those masks drop when the rules change. He said he's gone on 16 dates this year and documents each one. I asked him if the other girls knew. He said yes, eventually. It's important they don't know at the start, otherwise the responses are skewed. That's the actual sentence he used. I asked if he was recording anything. He said no, not audio or video, just taking notes after the date. Said it was ethically gray, but legally fine. He showed me a waiver and said I could sign it if I wanted my data removed. I was stunned. Sitting there mid-bite of garlic bread, realizing I wasn't even a person to this guy. I was data. I wasn't his date. I was a variable. He asked if I wanted to continue or if I wanted to leave. I told him I didn't know yet. I felt like I'd been pulled into a Black Mirror episode by accident. I kept expecting someone to pop out with a camera crew and tell me I was on some weird prank show. But then he said something that made it worse. He said, "You're already reacting more calmly than Subject 9, she cried. Subject 9. I just stared at him. He went back to eating like this was a casual update. He said you'd started the project out of frustration with dating apps, that they felt fake, transactional, and empty. So he wanted to analyze how people changed under pressure. And yeah, okay, maybe part of me gets that. Dating can be terrible, but tricking people into a research project while pretending to look for love, that's another level." I asked if he'd ever actually liked any of the people he met. He said one girl was promising until she found out about the study and blocked him. He sounded genuinely sad about it. I'm surprised that his whole creepy plan didn't work out. That he asked if I was okay continuing the date, just as people, he said, not data points. I told him I wasn't sure I could go back to normal after being called Subject 17. He smiled and said, "Actually, you're 18. Then he wrote something down on the clipboard. I felt like slapping it out of his hand. The food came and I barely touched it. Every time I tried to look at him, I just saw a graph in his head with little labels next to my facial expressions. He didn't even seem bothered, just casually asking if I felt seen or observed and writing down my answer while twirling spaghetti on his fork. I cut it short. Said I had to work early. He'd asked if I wanted to see the rest of his notes sometime. Said he could give me a personality profile. No thanks for it. He paid, of course. Said it was only fair since I contributed to the research. As we left, he tried to give me a hug. I dodged it, mumbled something about staying safe, and walked straight to my car. He emailed me later that night, an actual email, said my insights were valuable, and that he'd anonymize my responses in the final version of the study. Attach a PDF of the consent form and said I could opt out if I wanted. I didn't reply. I just read it, shook my head, and closed my laptop. This is one of those dates that started off way too wholesome. You know when things feel a little too perfect at the beginning, like almost staged? That was Hannah. Everything about her gave off this quiet, calming, girl next door vibe, like she just walked off a baking show or something. Not a usual type, but I was trying to stop going for chaos and give stability a shot. We matched on a Sunday night, which is weirdly when the app seems most active. Her profile was like a Pinterest board. Soft colors, plants in the background, books stacked by a windowsill. She had one picture holding a loaf of sourdough and another one of her painting, like she just stepped out of a Taylor Swift lyric. Her bio said something about loving intentional living, which I didn't even understand, but I was in a patient mood that week, so I messaged her. She replied quick, all lowercase, no punctuation. Very soft aesthetic energy. We talked about breakfast food, traveling, how annoying loud eaters are. It was chill. She suggested meeting up at this park that has one of those fancy little cafes built into it, the kind that sells $5 croissants, and calls it turkey sandwich artisan. It was a daytime date, which I usually avoid, but she said she liked the idea of walking and talking. I thought, why not? It felt safe, and I kind of liked how simple it sounded. She showed up in a denim jacket, long skirt, and these beige sneakers that looked like they'd never stepped in mud. She had a soft smile and a little reusable water bottle clipped to her tote bag. I was already mentally preparing myself to start composting. We ordered drinks. She got matcha latte, of course, and sat on this wooden bench by the pond. Ducks were literally swimming behind us. It was so peaceful it felt fake. She asked me a couple regular questions. Stuff about my family, where I grew up, what I do. I told her I work in tech, and she said, "That's so cool, you must be logical." Which, sure. Then she asked if I was religious, and I said not really, more spiritual than anything. She nodded like that was fine, but I could feel her taking notes in her head. Then she paused, took a sip of her drink, and said, "Okay, I want to ask you something kind of serious." I said, "Sure." She said, "How many children would you be willing to homeschool if we got married?" I laughed. She didn't. She was staring at me like I was about to take a pop quiz. I asked if she was being serious, and she said, "Very." She told me she was committed to raising a big family and doing it the right way, which for her meant homeschooling full-time and not relying on broken systems to raise her kids. I blinked, tried to process what she just said. She pulled out her phone and said, "I actually have a list of questions I usually go through early on. I hope that's okay." She had an actual note saved, titled First Date Screening. She started reading out loud. Would you be comfortable with 5 or more kids? How do you feel about structured versus free-form education at home? Would you allow your children to befriend public school students? Are you willing to finance a homeschool curriculum without compromise? I kept waiting for her to smile or laugh or give some signal that this was just a funny bit, but no, she was all business. I told her I hadn't really thought about homeschooling, let alone how many kids I wanted. She said, "It's important to think ahead. Dating isn't just about feelings, it's about shared vision." Then she said, "Don't worry, I won't judge you. I just need to know if you're capable of being a leader in the home." I looked around like maybe someone was filming this. The ducks had left. Even they couldn't deal. She went on to explain that she wants a marriage where the husband is the shepherd of the household. That's how she phrased it. A shepherd. She said the woman should be the emotional center, and together they create a kingdom mindset. I asked her where she got these ideas from, and she said she follows a few family vloggers who walk in biblical truth. I told her I didn't really watch that kind of stuff. She said, "That's okay. You'll learn." Then she hit me with the biggest question of the day. Would you be open to quitting your job and working from home so you're more present in fatherhood? I told her I'd never thought about it. She said, "The world needs more present fathers. God is calling men to return to the garden." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. I tried to steer the convo somewhere else. Said maybe we should walk a little. She agreed and stood up. But the questions didn't stop. As we walked around the pond, she started pointing at kids running by and guessing how many siblings they had based on their energy. She said stuff like, "That one's definitely the middle child, you can tell." She wasn't joking. Then she said, "I actually have some curriculum samples in my bag if you want to see." She pulled out this thick binder with laminated tabs. I swear on everything. She brought a binder to a first date. Inside were schedules, learning goals, Bible verses, and meal plans. She showed me a sample day that started at 6 a.m. with prayer and gratitude journaling and ended at 8 p.m. with scripture bedtime stories. I told her it looked like a lot. She smiled and said, "It is, but God gives us strength." I said I should probably start heading out because I had some things to take care of. She nodded and said, "Thank you for your honesty. I'll be praying about whether this has long-term potential." On the way home, she texted me a link to a homeschool program she recommends. Said, "Even if we don't work out, maybe it'll bless you one day." I never replied. The next morning, I got another message that just said, "Have you given more thought to how many children you'd be comfortable leading?" I blocked her. It wasn't even a bad date in the classic sense. She wasn't mean, she didn't insult me, she didn't live stream anything or bring an ex. But it felt like I'd stumbled into an interview for a role I didn't even know existed. Like she already had the whole movie written and just needed someone to read the lines. I wish I was exaggerating when I say this date felt like being squeezed into someone else's Google Calendar. Like I genuinely left feeling like I'd just taken up space in a scheduling app between dentist and pick up dry cleaning. That's what it was like with Zodid, a walking time slot with Kalan. I matched with him during that late night boredom scroll when you've already read every group chat, skimmed through TikTok for too long, and decide to open a dating app even though you know it's a bad idea. His profile seemed efficient. That's the only word I can use. 3 photos, him in a suit, him holding a coffee, and him standing in front of a car that probably wasn't his. His bio said something like, ambitious, focused. Let's make this quick. That should be my first clue. I messaged first, only because I had insomnia and wanted some kind of distraction. He responded in less than 5 seconds, every time, like he had notifications turned on and was standing there waiting. His replies weren't flirty, they were goal-oriented. What area are you in? Do you drive? Free this week? I honestly thought I was being interviewed for a carpool. We decided to meet at this little dumpling spot halfway between where we both live. It was casual, tucked inside a plaza, nothing crazy. He picked the time, 6:30 p.m. sharp on a Wednesday, and actually texted me, "Don't be late." Not "can't wait to see you" or "looking forward to it," just "don't be late." I should have canceled right there. But I didn't. I showed up a few minutes early just to be safe. He pulled up right on time, hopped out of a black car, and walked in like he was late for a board meeting. No smile, no hug, just a quick head nod. We sat down, and he immediately said, "Cool, I've got about 40 minutes, so let's get into it." That was how he opened, like we were speed running romance. I was kind of stunned, but tried to go with it. I asked how his day had been, and he said, "Productive. Let's talk about you." He pulled out his phone, not to scroll, but to literally open a notes app and look at a list. He had bullet points. First question, what's your schedule like weekly? I blinked. Said it varies depending on work. He nodded, tapped a note, then asked, "Do you want kids within the next 5 years?" Second question. I laughed because I thought he was messing with me. He looked up and said, "Sorry, I run tight evenings. I double stack dates, so I like to be efficient." Double stack. He actually said it like that was a normal sentence. I asked him what he meant. He explained that he's on 6 dating apps and averages 3 dates per week minimum because he filters in volume, like he's paying for gold or something. He said most people waste time building one connection that dies, and he preferred to streamline by running multiple dates back to back. It was all about ratios. I sat there processing that while sipping water. He said he met someone for coffee at 4:30 p.m., then dinner with me, then drinks with a Tinder maybe at 8:30. He wasn't even hiding it. He actually looked proud. Then he said, "Don't worry, I always leave enough time between dates to reset my energy. I want to give you the best version of me." I couldn't believe it. He asked if I had any non-negotiables and if I'd be okay with fast-tracking relationship stuff. He explained that if we worked out, he'd prefer we escalate quickly to exclusives so he could drop his other matches. I asked how long he typically waits before making that decision. He said, usually by the third or fourth date, or earlier if intimacy happens. I wanted to disappear. He asked if I was the type to get attached too soon, or if I was chill enough to handle a multi-match environment. I said I didn't really feel like being anyone's time block between meetings. He shrugged and said, that's fair, dating's a numbers game. You gotta get through volume to find quality. The food came and he started eating like it was a fuel stop. Barely looked up. I asked him if he ever slowed down, like just focused on one person. He said he tried that once, but she wasn't worth the sacrifice. Then added, she didn't even work out regularly, so it made sense. He had the nerve to ask if I had a gym routine. I said I walk my dog a lot. He said, not bad, but legs only. At that point, I didn't even want the food anymore. I just sat there, stunned. He checked the time, tapped his phone twice, then said, all right, I've got about 11 minutes left. Anything you want to ask me? I said, yeah, are you always like this? He said, like what? I said, this robotic, cold, efficient. He leaned back and said, it's called being intentional. Then he said he appreciated the convo, and if I wasn't into it, no worries, he'd move on. He said, I'd never take rejection personally. That's just data. Data. He called me data. He paid for the meal, which was the only decent part of the night. I stood up, told him good luck, and he replied, you too. Don't let your feelings get in the way of progress. I left and sat in my car for 10 minutes just staring at my steering wheel, wondering what the hell it even was. I texted my friend who dared me to go on 3 dates that month and told her she owed me therapy. I deleted Hinge for the 4th time this year. The next morning, I got a text from Zotted. It said, you're cool. If you ever want to re-enter the rotation, let me know. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. I want to see if he sends a mass follow-up in 3 months like a seasonal clearance sale. I'll start this by saying I never thought my bank account would come up on a first date. Not my job, not my income range. I'm talking actual dollar amount. The number sitting in my checking account. It's wild how fast a date can go from casual conversation to feeling like you're applying for a mortgage. I met Fatima on Coffee Meets Bagel. It was my first time using that app, and I only downloaded it because my cousin wouldn't shut up about how he met his girlfriend on there. Said it was different, more serious. I figured maybe it would be less chaotic than the others. That was my first mistake. Fatima's profile looked good. Confident smile, stylish outfits, captions that didn't make me cringe. She had one of those vibes like she ran her life like a startup. Her bio said, not here for vibes. I want results. Which, okay, sure. I thought maybe she just meant she was tired of messing around. We matched on a Thursday. Her first message to me was, what's your 5-year plan? I said something about growing my side business, getting more into freelance work, and maybe buying a place in the next couple of years. She said, that's a decent start. It felt a little intense, but I thought maybe she was just direct. We agreed to meet that weekend at this smoothie bar downtown. She picked a place, said it was cute and efficient. I didn't even know what that meant for a smoothie spot, but I went with it. I got there first. The place was tiny, all white walls and hanging plants. Felt like I walked into an influencer's dream. She showed up 10 minutes late, wearing heels and holding her phone like it was part of her outfit. She looked sharp, very put together, and gave me a half smile when she walked in like she was already thinking 10 steps ahead of the interaction. We ordered drinks. She got some spirulina situation that looked like alga in a cup. I had a basic mango thing. And we sat at a little table by the window. First 5 minutes were fine. She asked where I live, what I do, normal stuff. But she asked it in a way that felt like she was checking boxes off in her head, like there was a spreadsheet open somewhere in her mind. Then she leaned forward and said, so I'd like to get to the point early. I said, okay. She took a sip of her drink, looked me dead in the eye, and said, can I see your bank account? I blinked. Thought I misheard her. I said, what? And she repeated it calmly like she was asking if I'd seen a movie recently. Can I see your bank account balance? It's for compatibility. I laughed because I genuinely thought it was a joke. She didn't laugh back. She tilted her head and said, "I'm serious. I don't date men who aren't in my income bracket or higher. It saves time." I sat there trying to figure out what to say. She went on like it was normal. Said she made love 6 figures, that her goal was to retire by 40, and she was only interested in partners who were financially capable of leading a household. I told her that I was doing fine financially, but I wasn't going to show my bank account on a first date. She shrugged and said, "That's what men say when they're hiding instability." Then she asked if I had any debt, and when I hesitated, she said, "That's a yes." It was like being on a reality show where the theme is financial red flags. She told me she'd been on a string of dates where the guy turned out to be financially mid, and she was tired of wasting her time. She said one of her exes made $90,000 a year, and it wasn't enough for the lifestyle she envisioned. I asked what lifestyle that was. She said, "Luxury minimalism. Think Maldives, but make it quiet." I said I wasn't sure what that meant. She said, "Exactly." Then she asked what car I drove. I told her I had an older Camry, nothing fancy, but it ran great. She smiled like I just told her I was living in a shed. She said, "So you're not car proud." Noted. Noted. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. I saw the heading "Date Screening July." Under it were a bunch of bullet points. She added, "Drives a Camry. Won't show balance. Possibly frugal." I asked her if she always brought up money this fast. She said, "If we're building a future, we start with foundation. Finances first, feelings second." I told her I didn't think that's how most people approached things. She said most people end up divorced. Then she asked if I had life insurance. I said no. She said, "Not a planner. That's fine. Some women are okay with that. I'm not." She started talking about her dream wedding, not in a romantic way, but in a logistics way. She had a whole speech about budgeting for a $50,000 ceremony without it interfering with property investment timelines. She told me that if we got married, she expected a prenup and a clear financial growth strategy mapped out by year 2. I asked her if she even believed in love. She said, "Of course, but love is a luxury, not a foundation." I wasn't even mad at that point. I was kind of impressed by how committed she was to this whole thing. Like I'd never met someone who treated a first date like a finance seminar. Then she asked one more question. She said, "If you had to choose between buying a home or traveling the world, what would you pick?" I said, "Probably traveling." She said, "Yeah, I can't build with that." We finished our drinks in silence. She looked at her phone, said she had a 3:00 p.m. meeting, and stood up. As she walked out, she turned around and said, "You seem nice, but nice doesn't pay for a nanny." And then she left. She texted me later that night, "Thanks for your time. If your net worth increases, feel free to reach out." I didn't respond. I read that message about 5 times trying to figure out if I'd just been audited instead of dated. I've been on some weird dates, all right. Like, I had a guy fall asleep on me mid-convo. I've had one bring his dog and then make me split the dog's burger. I even once had a guy pretend he didn't know me halfway through the date because his ex walked in. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for Brandon and the surprise reveal he had tucked under the table. It started off pretty regular, actually. I've matched with him on Tinder, which I only re-download when I'm bored enough to gamble with my mental health. His profile wasn't bad. Clean shaven, lots of denim, motorcycle pictures, and one very random photo of him standing in front of a tractor. His bio was just security, loyalty, no drama, which honestly made him sound like an emotional support dog, but I was curious. He messaged me first, said something about my eyes, which was cheesy but tame. He didn't ask anything weird, didn't try too hard, and seemed genuinely interested in talking. Said he worked in private security, which sounded vague but not creepy. I figured maybe he was a bouncer or something. We talked a few days, and when he asked to meet up, I said yes. We decided on a local bar that's known for being chill. It's got booth seating, no loud music, pool tables in the back. The kind of place where you can actually hear the person across from you. I got there right on time and spotted him at a booth near the back wall. He stood up when I walked in, gave me a small smile, and said, "Glad you made it." He looked just like his photos, maybe even better. Broad shoulders, clean fade, smelled like that strong woodsy cologne that lingers. He offered to get our drinks, And when I said I'd just take a ginger ale since I had work early the next day, he nodded like that made sense. He came back with a ginger ale and a whiskey for himself. So far, so good. We started talking and he was intense. Not in a scary way at first, but he didn't really do small talk. He asked questions like, what's your biggest fear in relationships? And would you be willing to move states for love? Like, bro, I haven't even finished my drink yet. Still, I answered. Figured he was just deep or maybe overthought things. He told me he didn't take casually, said he was serious about finding someone and hated time wasters. I said that was cool, and he nodded real slow like he was measuring my reaction. Then it started to get weird. He started talking about how unsafe the world is, not in a general way, but in a hyper-detailed, very specific, borderline paranoia type of way. He mentioned stats, like actual numbers, break-ins, carjackings, random assaults. He had them memorized. Said he'd made it his life's mission to protect what's his. I asked him what kind of security work he did. He said he couldn't give details, but that it was high risk, high awareness. Then he asked me how I protect myself when I'm out alone. I said, well, I usually just stay aware, I guess. He goes, that's not enough. I kind of smiled, trying to keep it light, but he wasn't joking. He leaned forward and said, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but I carry a gun on every first date. I blinked. He tapped under the table and smiled. I thought he was bluffing, like making a bad joke to test me. But then he reached down and lifted the edge of his jacket. And yeah, there it was, a gun, tucked into a holster, under the table, casually sitting at his hip like this was the Wild West. I froze. My heart started beating in my ears. He said, don't worry, I'm licensed. It's legal. Legal or not, I was still sitting across from a man who brought a weapon to meet someone for drinks. I asked, why would you bring that on a date? He said, you never know who people really are. Then he winked. I looked around the bar. No one else seemed to notice anything off. He was sitting relaxed like this was totally normal. I asked if he always did that. He said, every single time. Just in case. I've got to be prepared. I asked, prepared for what exactly? He shrugged. Bad energy. Crazy people. Setups. You'd be surprised what people are capable of. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I didn't want to freak out or make a scene. I just slowly started wrapping up the conversation, saying I had to get up early for work and didn't want to stay out too late. He nodded like he understood, but then, and I'm not making this up, he said, it's good you're leaving now. If this vibe had shifted, I don't know if we'd still be talking. I said, what does that mean? He smiled again. I've got great instincts and a backup plan. That was enough for me. I stood up and said, all right, take care. He reached out for a handshake. I hesitated, gave him the quickest one ever, and practically sprinted to my car. On the way home, I kept checking my mirrors like he was following me. I don't even know why. Probably just adrenaline. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him that said, you passed. Not everyone handles pressure well. Passed. Like it was a test. I blocked his number immediately, then told every single one of my friends. Half of them were like, damn, maybe he was being protective, and the other half were like, you were 2 minutes away from a Lifetime movie. I still don't know what kind of person brings a weapon to a casual meetup and thinks that's a good idea. Like, what kind of outcome are you expecting? Best case scenario, I'm chill with it. Worst case, I call the cops. So I didn't even want to be on this date. That's how it started. My roommate convinced me to say yes because I'd been in a weird funk after my last relationship ended, and apparently the cure for heartbreak is letting strangers buy you fries. Katie was someone I matched with mostly because I was scrolling out of boredom while standing in line at the post office. She had that messy hot thing going on, kind of like she just rolled out of bed but on purpose. You could tell she either thrifted or paid $300 for her clothes and there was no in between. Her bio said, looking for something real but also maybe something useful. I thought it was a weird thing to say, but I figured she just meant emotionally, like maybe she wanted someone stable. We messaged for a couple days and her energy was all over the place. 1 minute she was asking deep questions about my childhood, next minute she was sending a meme about raccoons stealing pizza. I couldn't tell if she was chaotic or just really bored. Either way, I went with it. She suggested a bar downtown that she liked because it had good lighting. That should have been the first clue. I met her there around 7 o'clock p.m. She showed up in a bright red coat and black boots, hair done up, makeup full glam. Like red carpet level. I was just in jeans and a jacket, already feeling underdressed. She walked in and tossed her coat off like she was stepping into a scene, and hugged me like we'd known each other forever. We grabbed a table and ordered drinks. She started talking super fast, not nervous fast, more like her brain was sprinting and her mouth was trying to keep up. She talked about everything. Her ex, her job, her favorite comfort food, some weird dream she'd had about floating above a Walgreens. Then, while we were still waiting for food, she pulled out her phone and said, "Okay, let's take a few pictures real quick." I thought she meant selfies, which is fine. Whatever, I leaned in. But she goes, "No, no, no," like full body. "Stand over there by the wall." And she pointed at this little exposed brick corner of the bar. I laughed, thought she was kidding. She wasn't. She got up, adjusted the lighting on her phone, and said, "I just need a few good ones. Act natural, but like, happy to be with me." I was like, all right, weird, but I'm already here. So I stood next to her and smiled while she took like 10 pictures. She made me switch sides twice and told me to tilt my head a bit to the left so it looked like I was enamored. I finally asked what the pictures were for. She said, to make someone jealous. I blinked. Who? She said, my ex. He follows me from a burner account. I know it's him. He's gonna see these. I froze. So this is for him. She said, no, it's for me. But yes. Also yes. I didn't even know what to say. She pulled me back down into the booth and showed me her Instagram drafts. She already had captions saved. Things like, healing looks good on me, and you never deserve me anyway. What the drafts just said, I upgraded. I was speechless. I asked if she was serious, and she said, "You're cute. This bar has great lighting, and I needed believable photos. It's a win-win." I was not winning. I was confused and halfway through a burger I didn't even want anymore. She asked if I had any leather jackets in my car, and I said no. She said, "That's a shame. He always hated leather." I didn't even know what that meant. Then she started editing the photos right there using 3 different apps. She adjusted the lighting on my face, smoothed out her skin, added fake grain to make it look moody. She asked me to fake laugh in a video. I said no. She rolled her eyes and said, "God, men are so useless until you need them to perform." The worst part was that she wasn't mean. She was weirdly friendly, like she'd totally buy you a coffee but also use your existence as a chess piece in a personal drama you didn't sign up for. Then she said, "You're not catching feelings, right? Because this isn't that." I told her I hadn't even finished my fries yet, and she said, "Good, let's keep it that way." She took a boomerang of us clinking glasses, hers with whiskey, mine with water because I was driving, and captioned it, "Better company, better everything." I watched her post it, tag a location, and then block 3 accounts back to back. She muttered, "Just in case he gets brave." I asked how long it had been since they'd broke up. She said 3 weeks. Then added, "Technically he dumped me, but only because I made him think I cheated first." I leaned back in my seat, just stared at her. She smiled at me like none of what she said was remotely strange. Then she asked if I had any enemies I wanted to make jealous. I said no. She said, "Boring. Everyone needs a little revenge arc." After about an hour of this, I told her I had to go. She said, "Cool. I got what I needed. Thanks for being photogenic," like I was a prop she borrowed from a friend. She hugged me on the way out and whispered, "Don't take this personally. You're great. He just needs to think I moved on." When I got home, I checked her Instagram out of curiosity. She'd already posted 3 stories and 1 carousal of us. The caption said, "Healing in real time." The comments were filled with girls hyping her up. Someone commented he's hot, and she replied, "I always had options." I didn't even text her. I just sat there trying to figure out how I became someone's emotional stunt double. Okay, so this one felt weird from the beginning, like not in a off creepy vibes way, but more like something was just slightly off the whole time, like when a playlist plays a song that doesn't belong and you can't explain why it bugs you. I met Connor through Instagram, which already feels like a sketchy start, but hear me out. He slid into my DMs after I commented on a mutual friend's post. He sent me a laughing emoji, then replied to one of my stories with something about how I seemed chill. Not groundbreaking, but had just gotten out of something annoying and figured fine. He was decent looking, had good taste in music based on what he shared, and didn't open with anything gross, which is honestly rare. We started talking more. Nothing heavy, mostly dumb memes and music recs. Then it turned into longer convos, late night voice notes, random video chats where we didn't even talk about anything serious. He was charming in that quiet, calculated kind of way, like the type of guy who probably reads too much into your Spotify playlists and uses words like energy to sound deep. After about 2 weeks of this, he asked if I wanted to hang out. Said he'd be in my part of town and we could grab drinks or go for a walk. I said cool, and we planned to meet at this little park near a food truck lot I like. He suggested coffee instead of a bar, which made me feel a bit safer about it. Daylight, neutral space, nothing too intense. He showed up wearing a gray hoodie, dark jeans, and sneakers that were way too clean. He looked exactly like his pics, which honestly shocked me. He brought me coffee and handed it to me like we'd known each other for a year. No awkwardness, no fidgeting, just calm, smooth energy. We sat on a bench near the walking path, and at first it was easy. He joked around, asked about work, told me about a cat that lives behind his apartment. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "So, I should probably tell you something." I froze a little. That's never a good start to anything. He looked at me and said, "I've actually been following your socials for like a year now." Not in a creepy way. I just noticed you through mutuals and you stood out. I was silent. He kept talking. He told me he found my Instagram randomly and thought I was interesting, and had been quietly watching my stories for months before ever messaging me. He said he'd made fake accounts, not just one, multiple, to interact with my posts and see how I responded to different types of guys. At which I was kidding. He said things like, "I just wanted to understand what kind of energy you respond to." I wasn't stalking, I was observing. Said he treated it like a long-term vibe check. I literally just stared at him. I didn't even touch my drink. He went on telling me how he created 3 different accounts. One that commented like a flirty gin bro, one that acted shy and respectful, and one that just dropped fire emojis here and there. Apparently, he used those fake profiles to test whether I liked confident or subtle guys. Said it helped him tailor his approach. I asked, "Why didn't you just talk to me normally?" He said, "I had to know how real you were first." I didn't even know how to respond to that. I just kept thinking about every comment I'd ever gotten from a stranger, wondering which ones were actually just him. He told me his favorite of the fake accounts was the one that replied to my travel photos with Earth Goddess vibes. That one got the best response, apparently. I said, "So you've been pretending to be different people just to get my attention?" He said, "No, I was collecting information." Info. I asked if the mutual friend who posted the photo I commented on knew about this. He said, "Probably not. I don't usually tell people about this method unless it works." Unless it works. Like it was some science experiment and it was a frog in a beaker. Then he had the audacity to ask, "Aren't you flattered, though? Most guys won't put in this kind of effort." I told him effort isn't impressive when it's manipulative. He said it wasn't manipulation, it was strategic alignment. He really said that. Strategic alignment. I stood up and told him I had to go. He asked if I was upset or just processing the layers. I told him it wasn't that deep, and I wasn't flattered or curious or intrigued. I was weirded out. He said, "You're reading this wrong. It's romantic in a way." I said, "No, it's data collection." He shrugged like I was the one being unreasonable. Then he said, "I still think we could build something. You already liked parts of me before you knew they were me." That's when I walked away. The entire way home, I kept checking my DMs, scrolling through old comments trying to spot the fake ones. I found a couple that matched the one T described. "We seemed like a thing about life at night" was one. Another said, "Bet you like deep convos and thunderstorms." I wanted to crawl out of my skin. That night, he messaged me again from his real account. Said he hoped I could look past the approach and see that his intentions were rooted in real interest. I blocked him. The next morning, I woke up to a new comment from a completely random username that just said, "You never really noticed me, but I always saw you." I blocked that one too, then made my account private. To this day, I still don't know how many of those accounts were him or if he even stopped. I changed my handle a week later and started fresh. I'm not about to play emotional hide and seek with someone who treats dating like he's writing a dissertation. There's drunk, and then there's whatever Jenna was. Like, it wasn't just a tipsy kind of fun or that loud party drunk energy. It was like being around someone who was half hosting a game show and half falling off a chair. It started fast, got weird quick, and by the time I left, I was questioning if I should carry breathalyzers on dates. We met on Bumble. She messaged me first, and her opener was, "Do you like chaos or comfort?" Which now feels like a warning disguised as a personality test. I said something boring like, "A little of both, depending on the mood," and she replied, "Good answer. Let's get weird." I assumed she was being playful, so I went along with it. Her profile was this mix of concert photos, mirror selfies, and one picture of her drinking straight from a bottle of champagne. The captions were all stuff like, "Try me," and "Spicy but soft," which I guess should have tipped me off, but I thought it was just her vibe. A little wild, not unhinged. Or so I thought. We set up a date at this bar near my apartment. It's not a dive, not fancy, just one of those places with dim lighting and weird paintings on the wall that nobody ever talks about. I got there 5 minutes early and waited at the bar. She walked in 10 minutes later already laughing to herself, which should have been red flag number 1. Red flag number 2. She stumbled a bit on her way in. She came over, gave me a big hug, and said, "Sorry I pre-gamed. I needed courage." Cool. I'm thinking maybe she had 1 or 2 drinks to loosen up. That's fine. Then she ordered 3 tequila shots. Not for both of us, just for her. She said, "You can catch up if you want, like a head start." She downed 2 back-to-back and kept talking while the third one sat untouched. Her words were already kind of slurred, but she wasn't embarrassed at all. She started telling me about her ex, then pivoted to her astrology chart, then asked if I believed in soul contracts. I couldn't keep up. Every time I tried to steer the convo to something normal, like what she did for work or where she grew up, she made it weird. She said, "I work in PR, but not the boring kind." And then just winked like I was supposed to understand that. About 10 minutes in, she pulled out her phone and said, "Let's live stream." I said, "Wait, what?" She tapped twice, flipped her camera, and suddenly we were live on Instagram. I leaned back, out of frame, and she laughed and said, "Don't be shy. My followers love seeing the men I date." I was so caught off guard I just stared at her screen while strangers flooded the comments. One person asked, "Is he cute?" Another one wrote, "Show us the goods." Jenna turned the phone to me without warning and said, "Rate him 1 to 10, go." I just about melted into the bar stool. She handed me the phone and told me to read the comments. I saw kind of hot. Looks like he'd gaslight me, but I'd still go home with him. And 7 if he buys you fries. She thought it was hilarious. I was mortified. She ended the live stream after maybe 4 minutes, then asked if I wanted to go live on TikTok next. I told her I wasn't really into being on camera. She said, "That's suspicious," then flagged down the bartender for more shots. I tried to ask her about actual things, what music she liked, what she did when she wasn't working or drinking. She said, "Why do you guys always want to talk? It's a podcast. Just enjoy the vibe." Then she slid her drink toward me and said, "Come on, loosen up. I don't trust sober men." I told her I wasn't in the mood to drink much. She frowned and said, "That's what they all say before they ruin my night." At that point, I was getting pretty uncomfortable. I wasn't even halfway through my beer, and she was ordering a 4th round for herself. She started slurring heavy, dropping her phone twice, then said she needed to go to the bathroom and fix her aura. When she came back, she said she ran into some girls she knew in the bathroom and they talked about me. Apparently, the girl said I had mysterious energy and that Jenna should test my limits. I had no idea what that meant, but I didn't like the sound of it. Then she started leaning really close, like inches from my face close. She whispered, "You're cute when you're uncomfortable," and then laughed like that was the funniest thing I ever said. I scooted back a little and tried to reset the tone. I said, "Maybe we should wrap this up." She stared at me for a second, then said, "Wow, you're one of those nice guys, huh? The kind who acts polite but ghosts later." I said, "I'm just trying to make sure you get home safe." She stood up and said, "Don't act like you're better than this. You knew what kind of night it was gonna be." I didn't know what that meant either. She stormed off to the bathroom again and left her purse behind. I sat there wondering if I should just leave, but it felt wrong to bounce while she was in that state. She came back 10 minutes later and told me her ex had texted, and now she was emotionally confused. I offered to call her an Uber. She refused. Said she had a guy from Tinder meeting her there in 20 minutes anyway. I got up, left a $20 bill on the table, and told her I was heading out. She waved at me like I was a doorman and said, "Thanks for the content." She messaged me later that night saying, "You're low-key a vibe, but a little too soft for me." Blocked. It started with a voice note. Not a text, not a hey or a meme or even a boring opener. A full-on, minute-long voice message sent through the app. I didn't even press play at first. I thought it was a mistake. Who sends a voice note before even saying hi? But eventually I listened to it. His voice was deep, clear, confident, like the type of guy who probably reads out loud when he's alone just to hear how smooth he sounds. In the note, he basically said, "I'm not really into small talk, so if you're open to something a little unusual, I think we'd vibe." It wasn't creepy, just odd. And for some reason I replied. Ridwin had this sharp look in his photos, crisp clothes, gold chain, one of those smiles that looked calculated but still kind of charming. We started chatting, and it was way more interesting than the usual dating app stuff. He didn't ask what my favorite food was or what show I was binge watching. He asked if I believed in timing, if I thought some connections were situational, not soul-based. It felt different, like he was trying to unlock something. I was into it. So when he asked if I wanted to meet up later that week, I said yeah. We met at this little lounge that felt too nice for a first date. One of those places with low lighting and weird jazz music that only plays at exactly the wrong volume, just loud enough to notice but not loud enough to vibe with. He was already there when I walked in, sipping a drink with a gold watch glinting under the dim lights. He stood when he saw me, smiled real slow, and said, "Glad you came." He ordered me something fancy sounding with gin in it. We sat in this velvet booth and started talking. Everything felt smooth, effortless. He was funny but not too loud. Smart but didn't flex it. Told me he was in consulting, which meant absolutely nothing, but I didn't press it. For a while, it was actually going great. But then, and I swear it was so casual I didn't even catch it at first, he said, "So I have a weird proposition. Totally legal, just odd." I raised my eyebrows and said, "That's a strong opener." He laughed and leaned forward a little, like he was about to tell me a secret. Then he said, "How would you feel about being in a fake relationship for 6 months?" I paused, thought he was joking. He wasn't. He explained that his family, specifically his great uncle, was very traditional, very old school, and very rich. Apparently, the guy had this thing about only trusting family men. And in his will, he left a property clause that said Ridwan had to appear stable, committed, and married or soon to be married in order to receive part of an inheritance. That was the moment I started laughing, because who says that in real life, it sounded like a Netflix plot. But Ridwan was dead serious. He said he'd already been through 2 girls who couldn't keep a straight face at dinner, and he needed someone who could sell the love story. Said I had the right energy, whatever that meant. I asked, "So this date is like an audition?" He nodded. He said if I agreed, I'd get a cut. Not a huge one, but enough to make it worth my time. He mentioned $10,000 at first. Said we need to take photos, attend 2 family functions, and maybe even get fake engaged for a few weeks depending on how the will's phrased. I asked how much he was inheriting. He said he didn't want to say numbers, but it's real estate plural. I blinked, sipped my drink, then asked, why not just date someone for real? He shrugged. Said relationships were messy and people were unpredictable. He needed someone who could follow instructions and not get emotional. I asked him if he thought I looked emotionally detached or just desperate. He smiled and said, "No, you just seem like someone who gets it." Gets what? I asked how many people he pitched this to. He said a few. One almost did it, but she caught feelings. He said that last part like it was some medical condition. Caught feelings like a flu. I sat back in the booth, trying to process everything. He wasn't being creepy. He wasn't even being rude. He was just calculated. Every word out of his mouth sounded like it had been practiced. He said if I needed time to think, that was cool. But the deadline was tight. His uncle's health wasn't great, and the clock was ticking. He also said I'd have to delete my other dating apps for authenticity, and we probably need to rehearse some background stories. Favorite songs, how we met, inside jokes, stuff like that. Then he said, if we do this right, it'll be smooth. No drama. Clean split when it's done. I told him I wasn't sure I was a fake girlfriend type. He said, you'd be surprised what kind of type you are when money's involved. At that point, I finished my drink and just sat there staring at the weird little candle on the table like it was going to give me advice. I told him I appreciated the honesty, but I wasn't into it. He nodded, totally unfazed, said, fair enough. If you change your mind, let me know. I have a backup plan, but you were plan A. I said goodnight, got up, and walked out. The next morning, he sent me a text that just said, still thinking about plan A. I blocked him. Then I kept waiting for some fake Instagram account to follow me with pictures of loose photoshopped together or something. Luckily, that never happened. A week later, I heard from a mutual friend that he brought a girl to a dinner party and introduced her as his fiancée. Apparently, she barely spoke all night.